Yo, what is good, camp believers and high performers? I wanted to start off today's pod with a math question for you. I want you to get out your pen. I mean, who does pens and papers anymore? Get out your calculator, and I want you to do some math with me. What is 55 times 1 times 5 times 55 times 0? The answer is inevitably 0, right? So let's go ahead and teach you about the power of 0 in today's Mentorship Monday episode. All right. What's good, everyone? It's your boy, your podcast host, and high performance mentor, Des. All right. So be honest with me. How many of you started sweating? I don't know about you, but anytime that math gets mentioned, unless I'm calculating a tip of 20% because I worked in the bar industry throughout college, or unless I'm counting calories or other things that dietitians need to do, math is not my strongest suit. So I just want for all of you out there who started to sweat when I was like, hey, we're going to start off today's pod with a math question. I just want you to know that you're not alone and that you should feel seen, because even giving it to you, I started to sweat as well because I'm not much of a math person. So obviously the answer was 0. And anything multiplied by 0 is still it's still a 0. And honestly, the same is true for anything that you're chasing in life, because this is how we boil this down. And this is where it points it back to the power of 0 and really what today's Mentorship Monday episode is going to be about. Because when we look at your characteristics, your traits, your values, all the things that you're working toward, because we talk a great deal in this pod about keeping your side of the street clean so that you can show up as the healthiest version of yourself for all the areas that really help you to feel fulfilled. Because here's the thing when it comes to that. One horrendous quality can oftentimes overrun all the great qualities that you're constantly working on. So let's put this into context. Because it honestly doesn't matter if you're an amazing talent, if you're horrendous with communication. The same is very true if you're crazy strategic and resourceful, if you can't be trusted. And lastly, it's the same if you're super freaking gritty, if you lack the overall integrity that it takes in order to do great things. Now, why am I talking to you about this today? Because when we look at the power of 0, there's empowerment when it comes to getting to a place in your life where you can be explicitly honest with yourself, not in a way where it's shame. Because listen, pod fam, there's a difference between taking radical responsibility with how you think, how you feel, what you do, what you say, all of those things, versus stepping into that shame space. So when we go over this power of 0, I want to invite you to, again, we try to make sure that anything that we're trying to do here, that you look at it from the viewpoint or from the lens of observation and from curiosity. Okay, so as we do this, I want you to start observing some of these power of 0 qualities that you might have. Because we gave you a couple examples there. Because if you are someone who's extremely gritty and super resourceful, super strategic, but you can't be trusted, or you're not good at communication, those things are going to show up in your overall progress. And as we are giving you the tactics and the tools to show up in a way that is more high level, to show up in a way where you are more of a high level individual, we are going to have to start looking at some of those shadow and some of those dark areas, because none of us are people who don't struggle in certain areas. I know for me, especially as I continue to work on myself, I know one really big area of mine that is probably of that 0 quality is I struggle often. I struggle often from the standpoint of communication, even amongst my team. Shout out to you all who are getting this podcast out. I love you so much. Sometimes I joke with them because I'm like, hey, I really need you just to be inside of my mind. I really need you just to read my mind. But you know what? There are times where I need to be much more effective at communication. And that can become, had I not built some awareness around this, it could have been something that could have zeroed out all of the work that I'm trying to do. So in today's overall message of what I'm pushing you to do is to start getting to a point where you're observing some of those zero-esque qualities of yours. And that process isn't easy. It takes a very self-assured person to be able to take a step back and not only to receive that feedback, but also to get to a point where you're building awareness around areas that you need to improve. Okay, so what's the big takeaway here? Don't allow your weaknesses to become zeros because it might cancel out all the things that you're trying to do in your life. And we know what those areas are. Like, let me get real with you for a sec. Let's be honest. If you're taking a look at your overall characteristics, it kind of brings up that example that most of us have experienced where you're going through an interview and then they ask you, like, what areas, outside of the tell me about yourself, they then ask you, what areas do you feel like you need to improve on? And oftentimes you have to script those answers, right? Because you don't want to get to a point where you're like, yo, I'm batshit crazy, please hire me. You don't want to do that. But what you do want to do is give them an honest answer and give them some sort of tailing belief that this is an area that you are continuing to work on and something that you're continuing to build awareness around. So as we zero in on some of these things that we do need to work on, here are some things that I think would be incredibly beneficial as you build your awareness. We've talked a great deal about sitting down just 5 minutes to journal. So the big challenge for you today that I want you to be thinking about on today's episode is writing down 1 or 2 areas that might be possible zeros. Is it your work ethic? Is it that you struggle with honesty? Is it that you have zero boundaries? Right? You can show up for everyone, but showing up for yourself, that's a little bit different. Is it that you're hard to collaborate with? What are those things for you? So what I want you to do today is either to pause this episode and start taking a look and just start observing, because we want to look at what you're trying to work on from the standpoint of these possible zeros in your life, from the standpoint of observation, and also from the standpoint of curiosity. So the big challenge for today is I want you to take a look at 1 or 2 areas that might be zeros. And as you write them down, I want you to get incredibly vulnerable and I want you to dig. Where does this come from? What sort of things or what sort of areas are these zeros starting to impact? Is this your work? Is this your business? Is this your relationships? Is this with your habits? Is this with your mindset? Does this start to continue to develop a limiting mindset that keeps you stuck? There's a lot that we can gain from this. And so today's big challenge is for you to sit down. What are some 1 or 2 areas that might be possible zeros or are currently zeros in your life? And so as you build that awareness of where it comes from, how can you be resourceful? What sort of people can you ask for mentorship? What sort of people can you surround yourself with so that you can continue to level up in a way? Because I can tell you very, very adamantly is that as you continue to progress, it's not going to be all the fantastic things that you do. It's going to be those small little 1-degree changes of things that you need to work on in order to get to that next step. And what I'm pushing you to do today is really, really getting vulnerable with some of the areas that you need to improve on, some of those possible zeros, and to start working toward making sure that they're no longer a hindrance, but also something that's going to propel you to that next level in your life. So as always, if there's something that really, really stuck with you, I'm a really big person on taking action because the information is always readily available in anything that you're doing, but the application is what most people need. So if something stuck with you today, take the screenshot, tag us at DesiAbeta, at IMadeItPod on IG, and just let us know. We love to engage with our listeners. We love the community aspect of this. And I think it's amazing that we're stepping into episode 112. Shout out Robin B Group 112. That was my first thought. They were by far my favorite in middle school. Let me just tell you. So we're episode 112 right now. So this is a really big deal. All right. And you all have been along for this ride. So let's make sure that we're continuing to build awareness. We're continuing to take action. And in this case, we're building awareness around our possible zeros. See you in the next episode. Let's go.